What advice would you have for a young person trying to find purpose and fulfillment in their life?
Well, first of all, I don't worry about finding purpose in your life. I'm concerned in enjoying what you do. And if you're going to be working from 9 to 5 most of your life and spending the greater part of your day, try and work hard enough so that you can get to the level that you can have that kind of a career that will be stimulating and interesting to you, so that the better part of your day is an interesting day for you. And that is almost impossible to achieve if you have a parent telling you should or society saying you must. So walk to the tune of your drummer.
I'd say forget your idea of what success is going to be. If you engage in whatever it is your position or your job is, and you really put your heart in it, you like it, and you have a goal in your own mind, like I would like to when I'm interviewing this person, I would like to help them identify what is it that makes you tick? What's your hope? But I'd say stop worrying so much about success and follow your heart. Like too many parents and other people in kids' lives or older people's lives say, oh, don't do that. If you do that, blah, blah, blah. Like, don't be an artist. Don't be a musician. I never said to either of my kids who had the talent and the ability to be professional musicians, I never said, no, you can't do that because you'll never earn enough money, blah, blah, blah. No, I helped them find teachers, and, they've done well, both of them. Danny's a great teacher, and he mentors all his students really well. He taught hockey. Can you imagine? He was a coach of a hockey team in Barcelona when he first went over there, aside from playing the trumpet. So change your idea of a goal and do your best at what you're doing. And for instance, if we do this and you're doing what you want to do, you're trying to find little nuggets that might be helpful to people as they grow up or as they grow into their career. That's what's important. Finding something that you're doing that you feel is meaningful.
Chart a path for you that makes sense for you, and focus and stay committed to that. Be prepared to learn as you go along in case there's obstacles or whatever. You may learn from that and may have to make a detour or whatever. But the ultimate goal, stay focused on that.
Do you have a story from your past, or did you struggle with that at all, or where you had to make a courageous choice?
Yeah, I did. I guess the most difficult time, I served in Gaza for 10 months with the UN peacekeeping. And during that time, there was no phone service, there was no internet, there was no such. You communicated with your wife, I did, by mail, and that took a long time to get a response and so on. Anyway, but I learned I knew she was pregnant when I left, so she was carrying our first child when I was over there, and she had her first depression while carrying this child, and was admitted to an institution in Guelph called Homewood Sanatorium, and that was difficult. And of course, I was a long way from home. I wasn't allowed to return home, except because I was the aide de camp to the commanding general. He was an Indian officer. He had to go back to India for some reason, so I really had nothing to do. So I arranged to get a flight home, and I did, and I saw my wife for a week, which was wonderful. But then I had to go back, and that was the most difficult decision I've ever made, was to go back. But she encouraged me to do that because, it was my career and my duty was over there. So I've always been so grateful that she understood that, even in her condition. But she got better and produced a wonderful child, which I didn't see for 5 months. So such is life.
Find meaning and purpose in what you do.
That's my advice. Because my life was very, very much enlarged and fulfilled by the fact that I had interests that, well, in a way they they didn't consume me, in the way that they were so important to me. My life wasn't just tied up within the family nucleus. And that's what I think is unfortunate. I think I have a broad interest, and I think people should have broad interests, not just in their occupation, but even in culture. I mean, my husband and I traveled. We went to the symphony. We went to the ballet. We had broad interests, and I think that's important.
How do people find the thing that they're passionate about, that they can turn into their purpose, that like you found yours and you just went after it? A lot of people struggle to find the thing that they can commit themselves to.
Well, different things appeal to different people. I have a friend who does beautiful quilting. I mean, how did she find that? I don't know. She started sometime and she went. Different people will find different interests, but they'll never find it if they don't venture outside of their nucleus. You read stories of celebrities and others. They say, this happened. I went to the movies and I saw this movie and I realized that that's what I wanted to do. So that's how people find things. But also they may be influenced by their parents or by their best friends. So there's a variety of ways.
The skills of planning, the skills of organizing, of consulting, of asking. I have an exercise I used to do with my students, and I've done on workshops. You are the company, and you have a board of directors. Who are you going to have sit at your board of directors table to help you run the corporation that is me? And for instance, you can put people that do good things. I would put my mother there as how not to do it. Her rudeness and her demeaning behavior with others was a beacon for me on how to live. She was a very forceful person in my life, and I swore to God I would never treat people, behave the way she did. And from that perspective, she's a very important member of the board of directors. And so that's an analogy that I find very helpful. Be willing to accept that you don't know, that you need help, and being willing to accept help when it's offered, or to ask when you know you need it. And here, you see a lot of persons who, I'm fine. Well, they want to be fine, but whether having fallen they are needs to be determined before they can be moved. But somebody, that's fine, I've got it. And people who do not know what persons with canes and walkers and so on do and do not need, what society needs right now is how to talk to seniors. Because you have gray hair doesn't mean you don't think. And the automatic assumption that because you're elderly, you can't do things, which in many cases is you can't. But then again, being overly helped is irritating. And yet the person means nothing more than to be helpful. But they don't know that helpful for some is irritating. And it's interesting to watch how people, they don't hear and they don't realize that we're all talking about something entirely different they're talking about. And that's sad. And so there's a heck of a lot of education that needs to take place because we're outnumbering you all very quickly.
My dream is always, it's a dream every day. I got a picture of the wife and I always tell God, lift it up, and then have this miracle. Give me $250,000 trillion to help all over the world, plus $1 million to help somebody close by. in Toronto, like, plus $33 million from CNN to do all this on camera. Plus, get people that you make, if they want to pay you more money. I mean, you got enough money with that to give you money. And plus, everybody in Northtown be perfect. Just make a miracle that they're good. And then give them a job altogether to help the world
You wish for that every day?
every day. There's a picture when I'm watching TV every day.
What makes you want to help, the world instead of just yourself?
We're all the same. And there's so much waste of food. Then there's people that don't have anything to eat, nowhere to sleep, nothing to wear, And then there's people that got too much and they waste it. And it shouldn't be like that. It should be, we should all be the same, like I said.
What was your dream growing up?
That was my dream.
Did that come from your parents? What motivated you or inspired you to have such a big dream?
Mostly because I read about the immigrants in the Mediterranean, that they're escaping just to get a better life, and people in Mexico trying to get there in the United States, and things like that.
I would say, keep moving. This is what I tell them. Keep moving. Enjoy it. Enjoy what's around you. Because everything here to make you happy, to do things. This is why they have exercise, to keep you moving. And that's what I keep saying. Just keep moving.
I love how you have very positive and optimistic view on life.
During the war years, one brother was overseas for 4 years. My other two brothers were around Canada. But through those years, I worked assembling binoculars and then shift work. So it's been a good life, I can't complain.
What is one thing you believe young people today should focus more on?
They should focus more on peace and on democracy. I think the world is in a very worrisome place right now.
What can people do? I think a lot of people feel hopeless and like I can't do anything. I don't have a voice. What do you recommend people do?
Well, some people have a voice, and more people should have a voice. The politicians will only respond to tremendous amount of pressure. They do make some changes here. In the last few years, as imperfect as they may be, we have a child care. We have the beginning of pharmacare and dental care. So those are not in response to Trudeau's good wishes. They're in response to the pressure from lots and lots of people.
Do you think everybody would benefit from military service?
Not everybody, because I think there's people who, they're pacifists and, don't believe in war. But I tell you, the strongest pacifists are soldiers. Once they know what's going on, they don't believe in war either. They'll do their duty, of course. It's a terrible, terrible way to solve international problems. But, the world is not in a very good place right now. And there's always that threat. But, so I think, unfortunately, countries need defense forces.
I think even just the structure and the discipline and the education.
At one point, I commanded the Canadian Forces Recruit School, which meant that every single Anglophone recruit across the country came to the recruit school for their first 12 weeks of training, and it's really convert them from civilians to basic service people. And at graduation, we'd always have a reception, the parents would be there, and a nice parade and all that. And I've had so many parents say, it's a miracle what you've done for our daughter or my son. Yeah. They're polite, and they make the bed, they tidy up. They're wonderful adults.
What's the key to getting young people to follow you?
You mean in a stressful situation, or?
Well, just in general. I mean, you're taking people. That's a difficult transition from civilian life and their, old
Yeah.
habits and ways of thinking to now being in the military, be part of a machine. How do you get people to follow you, to agree with your way of seeing things, to do what you say they should do?
First, they have to have an understanding of what their role is and what your role is as their leader, and treat them with respect, firmly when necessary. But the discipline and the routine, it all, and teamwork, they all become very proud of being part of a unit.
How do you get people from all sorts of different backgrounds, religions, cultures to then function well as a team?
Well, that sometimes is a challenge. I had the first group of indigenous recruits come to me at the recruit school from up north. And it was a challenge for them because the environment was different. You have experienced trainers, and they know how to handle these people, and they did a great job. The idea of sending these Inuit down to us was to make them service people, and then they would go back north, would be posted and stationed up north. None of them wanted to go back north. In a sense, the experiment backfired because they all wanted to stay, in southern Canada. So, and some did, and they molded in very well.
Do you have a regret that you learned a valuable lesson from?
Not really. I've had a good life. I had friends, and I stayed home. And I looked after my mother. When my brothers and sisters left home, got married, and we had a good life together. So I couldn't wish for a better life than what I've had. And of course, coming to Dalmanor has helped. I've had a good life here. And I hope I still do.
What's something you used to think mattered a lot but realized wasn't important as you got older?
Well, there's lots of things, I think. I suppose when we're younger, women especially pay more attention. I still pay attention to how I look. But as a young person, you really are almost obsessed. When I was a kid, I was very worried because I have a bump in my nose. And when I was a young girl, 14, 15, I mustn't let them take my picture from over there because I've got this horrible bump in my nose. How you look is not as important as you think, because what you project, I think, in your face is how you feel. And if you're interested in the person you're talking to, things go better, always. And you have to listen carefully with your mind as well as your ears.
What's the secret to a long, happy life?
Sense of humor, smiling. My daughter-in-law, who's very actively engaged in the insurance business and so on, decided one day to follow my example and smile at strangers. And she started to do that about, maybe a year or more, a couple of years now. And she has reported back to me what a difference it's made in her life. Just smiling at a stranger in a bus stop. I mean, sense of humor, irreverence.
Any relationship advice for finding somebody who supports you and your goals and dreams?
A life's partner is the most serious choice you'll ever make in life. And I was fortunate I've made the right one. I've been married for 66 years 2 days ago. So
Wow, congrats.
Yeah.
And so, how do people find that partner? Any advice?
No, I don't know. It's just a sense, you got the right person. Yeah. But it's a commitment, it's a lifelong commitment. And what I see today is people aren't as committed as I think they should be. Oh, well, didn't work. Try somebody else. I don't get that. So anyway, it worked for me. So
Well, I just celebrated 12 years with my wife, so you're giving me something to aspire to,
oh,
which is
yeah,
great.
well, good for you.
Do you have any regrets that you learned a valuable lesson from?
One regret, one time. I used to work for this guy, and me and the wife weren't getting along together. He having trouble with his wife, and he beat her up. And it's working good. So I didn't beat my wife up, I just slapped her. But I hurt her. I regret that right till now. It was awful, because I wouldn't hurt a fly. But I did it with her, and I regret it all the time. I don't regret leaving her, but I regret hitting her so much.
If you went back and talked to younger Lewis, how should he have dealt with that situation with your wife at the time?
I would have took it easy and take my time to get things better, because it would have worked this way. But this guy, the boss, he said he ruined me because I'd never hit anybody. Never. I tried it, and it hurt me even now.
What's the most important lesson you learned from each of your parents?
They're both from modest backgrounds. When I was a young teenager, I guess, I thought I knew everything. And so my father wasn't very smart, in my view. When I was in my early 20s, I suddenly realized that he became very smart all of a sudden. And I thought about that for a long time. I wonder how that was. And I realized I became a little more mature. And I didn't know so much when I was younger. And he was, he wasn't all that well educated and so on. But he knew life, he understood life, and his advice was always, appreciated and worthwhile listening to. And it was enjoyable to chat with him, And I always regretted looking down when I was so smart, at a young teenager, and I didn't know anything. But it took a while to realize that.
And what about your mom?
Well, she was a wonderful person. My father went overseas in 1940. It was interesting. He was in the militia, reserve army, as a sort of a hobby. When war was declared, his unit in our town was activated for active service. And so everybody was re-interviewed. He was 40 years old and 5 kids at home. So they said, "Thank you very much, but we don't need you, look after your family." He didn't think that was right because he was very patriotic. He hitchhiked 100 miles to Montreal to join an infantry unit, the Black Watch of Canada, and he was sent overseas. An infantry soldier at 40 years old. My heavens, that's a 20-year-old game. But once you got to England and they realized that, he was too old to be a combat soldier. So they made him the camp electrician. So he served over there for 4 years. Just helped, around the base. So my mother was raising 5 kids at home, without my father. And we were brats. So it was a real challenge, but she was wonderful. She did a great job. We all ended up pretty successful, so kudos to her.
How do you want to be remembered?
I should be remembered as a person who is an activist in my profession, as I described, but on the other hand, as a very loving mother and grandmother because I'm very lucky. My 2 surviving sons are wonderful to me, and I have 7 grandchildren, and they all get along well with one another, and I love them and they love me, so that's a wonderful thing to be proud of.
What do you think the most important lesson has been that you've passed down from you to your kids to your grandkids?
I have a good relationship with my grandchildren and my children, so they've come to me, and I've listened to them, and I've validated what they're talking about and what they're feeling. I want to say that I didn't lecture them and I didn't tell them what they shouldn't do and what they should do. But the first thing I did was to teach them what I've just been talking to you about. And I gave them those tools. And one of my granddaughters said the most important thing I taught her was, in any situation, you have 3 choices. You can try and change the situation, you can try and change the person, or you can leave the situation. And that's it. And to her, that was quite something, that she has that choice in every situation. They really, and my children do use rational emotive thinking.
What's the biggest lesson you learned from your mom and dad?
To care about other people. That's how I would sum up social activism. To be they were very sociable people also. But what I learned from them was what it means to be a progressive person in this society.
It seems that the care extended beyond, like most people, when you say care about other people, they just think about their friends and family and the people closest to them. But for you, it seems like it's, no, care for the world, care for the country.
Not the whole world, but somewhere in between.
So you learned that from your parents, of caring for...
Well, from my parents and their entire circle of friends. I mean, the type of people that they associated with were people who thought like they did.
Looking back, what advice would you give your younger self?
I've always been very active, and that's what I would say. Be active, be interested in what you're doing, and that's what I've tried to do. Be interested in people.
Before we started rolling,
Yes.
you said this is a new experience and you've never done anything like this before. And I think it just, to your point of be interested and say yes and try new things, here you are at 101 years old, still trying something new.
I can't believe I've made it this far. I've gone through a lot of illness, but I've fought it. I've had cancer a couple of times, and other little things, but I've got over it, and I fought it, and I said, I'm going to live. You pray to God that you're going to.
What does success mean to you, and do you think you've had a successful life?
So far, it's not over yet, you know.
True.
I may be older, but I'm not dead yet. So what's important? To be happy in what I'm doing. If you don't like your job or your position in a company, quit. You've got to take risks in order to proceed. And I think our ideas of success are too limited. Like perhaps I do an interview or something and I think, oh, that went really well. And that's happy, that's success. And so you have to learn to listen to yourself and realize what makes you happy is often the success. And also to be learning as you go. Everybody makes mistakes, but no mistake is without a solution, if you want, or a way of changing. Especially as an artist or a musician or doing an interview, if you feel, oh, gee, that was really awful, I hate that, I'm sorry I did such and such, then you play it back to yourself, oh, that's not so bad. Like quite often we judge a thing wrongly, and you have to give it time and say, boy, that was really important. Maybe what we do sometimes is important to another person. In other words, I always mentored people, no matter what job I had, or and it doesn't mean giving them advice, because I think you really shouldn't be too free with advice, because it has to be so particular to the person. And the most useful advice is to tell them, take a deep breath and be serious about what you want to achieve in whatever it is you're doing. And sometimes something you think has been a disaster is a real success. Maybe you touched something in a person and gave them some confidence or some reassurance, and you didn't even know you did it. And for me, that's the biggest success. If you can be seen as, well, I think of it as a loving thing. I think I'm a loving person. I have good friends, and my kids are secure, and I have a great husband. Those are successes. So be careful what you're counting as a failure or a success, because you can be dead wrong, you know?
What's one thing you believe young people today should focus more on?
It should focus less on the internet and their devices. You can learn a lot, and I agree, you have to stay abreast of technology. I mean, that's important. But I think there's a lot of time wasted on texting and gaming, and when they should be doing something more useful.
What should they be doing instead?
Maybe nurturing relationships like friends and family. And you can't do that texting, you know, it's not the same.
If someone watching is struggling to figure out how to go chase their career and ambition, but also be nice, and they think they're two different things. You know, like in order to get ahead, you have to be mean, you have to step on people.
Well, you have to work hard in your life. Mm-hmm. That's the only way you're going to survive. But some people work hard and they still starve. Like I was watching a movie yesterday about this guy that went to space, Mexican guy. He was, they were coming to the States from Mexico, the whole family, picking corn and stuff like that. They were getting paid next to nothing. And his dream was to go to the space after he grew to a certain age. And he ended up doing that. He tried to about 31 times, and he wasn't allowed. Then he went there in person, and he got in. And that's a dream. You get something that you really like.
When did you decide that you had to be a voice and you had to stand up besides just being a practitioner?
Well, it sort of came upon not as a eureka experience, but first of all, both my parents were fairly active socially. And so I think that in my growing up, I was aware of social activism, of justice, and the impacts of poverty and things like that. That was in my background all the time. I became an advocate, really. It was an interesting experience. In 1975, it was declared the International Year of the Woman. And the Canadian government sponsored workshops across the country. And I was a neighbor of Betty Stevenson, who was at that time the first woman president of the Canadian Medical Association. And she was invited to do a workshop in Shelburne, Nova Scotia, but she couldn't go. She was too busy. So she asked me to go. And I did some preliminary readings. And that was the first time I became aware of this issue of women's health that I mentioned to you. It was a lovely weekend. I went out there. We did several workshops, and the women there were so grateful. And they said, how did you in Toronto know what our problems are here in Nova Scotia? And that was the eureka. And when I came back, I began to read and talk and attend conferences and begin to understand about women's health. Now, I wasn't the only one. There was a big movement in the United States and also in Canada. This is in the 70s, so you know that there was a lot of movement then in terms of women's rights and women's health and so on. So I wasn't unique.
Maybe not unique, but I mean, a lot of people just kind of accept the status quo or don't have the courage to voice up and don't want the criticism.
That's true. And I had many patients when I was in practice because I didn't go to McMaster till the end of the 70s. And they were acting out the fact that they had expectations. They were supposed to be the good wife, you know, who took care of the house and took care of the kids and household to the husband. And that's how women were expected to be in those days.
Do you have a favorite mentor from the Army that you learned a lot from?
Well, there were several, because there was a lot of very good leaders. Some not so good, but you know there were some very good leaders, which one would expect from the Army. One was a general by the name of Dextras, who was chief of the defense staff when he retired. He was very, very good with people, and he set a fine example.
So what did you learn from him?
That other word again, perseverance. Look after your men, and then they'll respond to you. That's the key message. Treat people right, and don't belittle subordinates ever. And that applies to all facets of life.
What is one book you think everyone should read?
Well, as I'm not a reader, but maybe the Bible. I have a friendship book, has all kinds of little writings in it for every day. My nephew gives it to me every Christmas. He gave it to my mom up to the time she passed, and that would be about maybe 50 years, 25. And I've been receiving since then. So that'd be about 50 years.
Wow, awesome.
Beautiful book.
If somebody's just at the beginning of their career, they just graduated, university, and they're starting off, what do you think they should focus on?
Well, you've got to focus on beginning your career. I mean, there's no question starting career, building up, let's say, a medical practice, or developing any kind of reality in any other profession. That takes full time. Then you have a young family. So in order, or you're married. If you're young, you're going to have a young family. The pressures on the personal are very hard. And I think it's only reasonable to expect them to focus on that, at least initially, but not forever.
Looking back, what advice would you give your younger self?
Stay focused on your goal, whatever it is. It's easy to be distracted. It's easy to succumb to false or weak advice, being trapped by compliments that aren't meaningful. You have to set goals and stay focused.
Speaking about your dad, what's the greatest lesson that you've learned from him?
His philosophizing, his questioning of life, his wanting to ask questions no matter in whatever situation he was, he would ask questions about it. And I got that from him. So he had a philosophy of life. Don't sweat the small stuff. I don't know what the expression is. But he always felt that you work hard to make your life as good as you can and accept the life that you're given. I think acceptance is a very important thing of where you are in life in a lot of areas. So that's the answer to my question. That's what he taught me, the acceptance of life and the philosophizing about life. He was a great philosopher.
Looking back on life, what advice would you give your younger self?
I don't believe much in advice. For instance, if I were talking to myself, I would say the one lesson that I didn't learn soon enough was to listen to myself. And most people should understand that when things happen, like if you get an illness or you have an accident, you're the person who knows what's happening. And you know pretty much what you need, although you have to take the medical advice given to you by your doctor. And a good example of the sort of thing I mean, I was a rider, a horseback rider. I had horses, and I was just riding, and I was training. My own horses had died, so I was leasing horses. And I had this young horse who was very, quite highly strung, thoroughbred. And I was bringing him along with the help of a man who used to be one of the Olympic trainers. And so I was bringing this young horse along. And on this particular day, he was a bit jumpy, and I had been riding for almost an hour, and my right leg was getting tired. I had broken it earlier, not riding a horse, walking. And this young woman who also rode that horse, but she's a professional rider, and she said to me, because I was doing things in a particular fashion, and she said, you should really do that at maybe a trot, or more sensibly even a lope. So I said, well, to myself, the way I was training this horse was we did everything properly at a walk first. And then as he got relaxed and used to the dressage exercises that you do with a horse, then we'd go on to a trot, and finally we would go on to, not a gallop, but a 3-gaited run. But she said, oh, no, he's fine, you'll be fine. My head was saying, you know what, your right leg's getting tired. And sure enough, that stirrup got loose. And what happens is, a horse is kind of like a passenger in an airplane. In other words, the rider's driving, telling him what she wants or he wants to do. And I thought, I don't know, but okay, she's been doing this for a long time. She's younger than I am, but she's professional. So I put him into a canter, and my right leg began to lose its stirrup, simply because it was tired. And as soon as that happened, your seat is not secure. Okay. And the horse feels that, and he thinks, oh, no, she's in charge. And he got nervous, and he began to gallop a little bit, and I lost that stirrup. And I thought, okay, I'm coming off whether I want to or not, so I'll make the choice, which is what you really should do. So I shifted my weight, and I got my reins where I wanted them. And unfortunately, I curled my back like this as I went down, and I hit the floor, middle of my back, and I broke my back. So what's the lesson there? The lesson is, I was thinking when she said, go, try him at a canter, it's much smoother. And I thought, no, this horse isn't ready for that yet. We do everything at each. But I thought, she probably knows better. Big mistake. Big mistake.
How do you develop the discernment to know when to listen to the voice in your head versus the experts who know what they're doing?
I think what I'd like to say to my younger self is, you know more than you think you do, always. And if you're not sure, don't do it. Whatever. It doesn't have to be riding, it can be anything. And it's important, I'm sure you as an interviewer, when if things are not going, they're going sideways on you, and you have to sort of listen to yourself, like, okay, stay calm, just, take charge again and take it forward. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I would say to myself, yeah, you've been around the block a few times, you know a thing or two, listen to yourself first. Today, it's different, because the young people today, I think, show evidence of feeling very entitled. Okay? When I was a little girl, if I wanted a bicycle, I had to earn half the money. And that kind of thing. We were not entitled to anything, because the first thing was the family looking after itself. So that, I think, for young people, I would say you're not entitled to much. You're entitled to love and attention from your parents, but you're not entitled to expensive things that you think you want, or permission to be out late. You have to get permission if you're a kid today, right?
What's something you used to think mattered a lot, but realized wasn't important as you got older?
I guess what people think of you. You can overemphasize that and let it distract from your path that you've chosen for yourself. You have to be sure that what people are thinking or saying is truly meaningful and not there's no ulterior motives there.
And how do you discern the difference?
That's experience, I think, life experience, and know the source.
Looking back, what advice would you give your younger self?
Keep open to change, plan, establish some priorities that you would then figure out how to go about, or learning how to go about fixing some things that I wouldn't know how to do. And I don't mean mechanical. Relationships, how to deal with, as a principal, I was dealing with teachers who were incompetent or unkind or what have you, and how to help them be better, because you can't fire them. So the very least, the effort, a lot of my effort went into curriculum development and staff development. My partner in this business, we had a company. We did resume writing and interviewing techniques and helping, and I learned a lot about helping people through that kind of thing. So for learning, if I had things to do over again, I wish I could bring with me or foresee the gifts, the talents, the skills that I have now, which would have been so useful if I'd known then.
What's the most important gift or talent that you would have loved to have earlier?
Less innocence. Other people aren't always as nice as you think they are or would like them to be. But it really irritated me when people told me that other people weren't. Did you not know that he, whatever? I didn't need to know that, and I regret that. So whatever it would take to be open to the new, with the skill, I don't know that I even have it now, the skill to recognize it's not all as it appears, that the person, he's not lying, but he or she is not telling the truth. And I go along with my glass half full and assume the best. And on a couple of occasions, nothing in particular strikes me. It would have been helpful if I'd realized that before I got into whatever it might have been. I'm talking in terms of my work with staff and students and so on.
Do you have a regret from life that you learned a valuable lesson from?
I have lots of regrets. I'm sorry in the way that I wasn't the kind of daughter I think I should have been. I regret the fact that I had 3 boys, but the middle one was adopted, and he died young. Everybody has regrets in life. If you couldn't possibly go through life with no regrets.
What is something you wish people appreciated more?
Each other. You have to like each other. That's a problem sometimes.
How do we remember to do that when there's so much chaos happening in our lives?
Well, when you get to about 35 or so, you should be able to do that. When you're young, it was always, you get some kid that's a little strange and everybody laughs at him, But when you get to a certain age, you get away from that and appreciate everybody.
Looking back, what advice would you give your younger self?
It's the same thing, just be good to people, be nice, and help people that are in need.
Is there a regret that you have that you learned a valuable lesson from?
I always get mad at God
Okay.
because, when I was young, we learned that He could do everything. But then I realized that we're all God. We can do his work all together and help out.
Did something happen that helped you make that switch?
No, not really. But you look what's happening in the world, and it shouldn't be. We should all get together and help each other.
How do we do that? What would your guidance be?
It's like the trouble they're having in the States now with the immigrants, what Trump is talking about to send them back, and even kids. We just have to share things, so to make things easier for everybody. It's hard. Like I read the news, or read the news almost every day, and I watch what's happening in Europe. These immigrants are drowning almost every day. And they're being taken advantage of by some crook. They charge them a lot of money to bring them over to different places in Europe. And most of them drown. That shouldn't be. Some organization should help them.
What did you do for work when you're in your working days?
I worked as a stenographer. I worked in an office for 42 years. After the war, Second World War, I went to Shaw's Business School, took a course. I got a job. I stayed at that job for 42 years. I could run the office. I'm in touch with a gentleman in Prince Edward Island that used to work for the company. Once in a while, I'll phone him, see how things are going. He says he doesn't know anybody but me that worked there. Like, keep in touch. So I had a good job. And when I retired, they said, "Why are you retiring?" I said, "Well, it's about time. I was 65. And just enjoy myself. Life has been good. It ups and downs, but you make it."
What is your secret to living a long, fulfilling life?
You have to look after your health. You need to pay attention to and avoid bad habits like smoking or too much alcohol or too much fast food. You need to pay attention to diet, exercise, and I don't think the youth of today is getting enough exercise. We were brought up, you're out in the summertime for sure, you're out on the street playing and, until the sun went down. So we were always fit. But I don't see that today. I see too many overweight youth and not enough physical activity. And I think you have to look after your health starting at a young age, because bad habits, start eroding your health. So you need regular checkups as well. It's important.
How would you define success? And do you think you've had a successful life?
I had a documentary made of me, and at the end of the documentary, they said, "Would you do anything different?" And I said, "I'm very satisfied with my life." There were tragedies in my life. There was great successes, lots of things. But overall, I am satisfied with my life.
What's your secret for a long, happy, fulfilled life?
Now, there's a new book. I don't know if you've seen it. Well, it's not that new, but a couple of years old. It's called The End of Old Age, and it's not death. This is a gerontologist who says the people who live the longest are the ones who enjoy life, who have a project. Maybe they're interested in art, or they're interested in music, or they're interested in people. People who stay engaged as they get old. Forget about the number of years you're going to live. Because we can't tell that. I mean, we may take good care of ourselves and get really obsessed with that. And this guy says, don't be so obsessed with that stuff, think about what are you going to do next? And that's something I certainly ask myself a lot. Oh, here we are, we're in a senior's residence. And it's something that all of us, I think hard about. Do you really want to live in a community of only older people? But of course, you can stay engaged with lots of other people at the same time. And it's important to have a kind of a plan, like what next? That's what I think is important. And I think people who are looking for, what meaning of life, purposes, they don't have to be grand, important projects. But I want my kids to know I love them and I support them in what they do. But I'm not a helicopter mom, never was. We have one fellow in Barcelona who's a musician, who teaches, and who is also, he's quite well known over there as a trumpeter. And my other son is also musical, but he said, no, I'm not going to be a musician. I want a life. Because, musicians are limited. They don't have opportunity to become really famous and wealthy. Now, Dan and Laia, his wife, are both professional musicians, and they've done all right. They have 2 little kids, though, 13 and 9. My other son said, no, I'm not going to be a musician. I want to have a life. David and I always laugh and say, well, we're not sure exactly what he does, but he prepares businesses, mainly in television and cable programs, but big ones, and he prepares them for takeover, either by another person or go public. And he loves what he does. And the funny thing was, he never liked math when he was in school, and here he is working on this company and how much money it's making, and is it growing, is it a good company, and he prepares the company and the employees for takeover. He hasn't very often stayed with the company. That usually means the end of that particular job, right? But he's always got a lineup of people because he's good at what he does, and he loves it. And and he reports directly to the CFO and the CEO, so he's fairly high up in it. But he's also a people person, and I think a lot of people who are in financial business jobs are more obsessed with money. What's the bottom line? What are we going to do? He has to know that, but he also has to be able to relate to the employees, and and he loves what he does. And so far, at 58, he's usually, I don't want to jinx him, but he's usually got a job waiting somewhere. He's never worried about it.
What's something you used to think mattered a lot, but realized wasn't important as you got older?
Getting rich. When you're young, you always dream of getting to be a millionaire, and then what's the matter? It doesn't make any difference.
So what's more important?
Be happy, and I keep saying the same thing, is get along with people. It's very hard sometimes.
Why do you think we struggle with getting along with people?
Because we're all the same. But sometimes religion divides us. We'll have to learn that we're all the same, and we can do something about it to help people in need.
What's a regret that you've learned an important lesson from?
My biggest regret is that I did not complete university, and get a degree. It's always sort of bothered me. Of course, when I finished high school, and I did pretty well, my parents couldn't afford to send me into university, and there weren't the same programs available, scholarships and that kind of thing. I did win a scholarship in high school for $200, but I just turned it down because it wasn't very helpful in terms of going to university. So that's what I enlisted in the Army, and I was there for 28 years. But whenever I was stationed in one place long enough, I went to university. Like when I was in Ottawa, I went to Carleton and earned some credits, and then the University of Manitoba started a program by correspondence, so I got a few more credits there. I ended up with 3 years of university, but I never had the opportunity to finish it because I was away too much and that kind of thing. So it just always sort of bugged me a bit.
What is something you wish people appreciated more?
Their contribution. I'm a very strong believer that if you're going to be making decisions, you consult the persons who could be affected by the decision, and therefore appreciate the opportunity to speak out, to be welcomed. If not, you don't win the day, but you have a voice. And I wish more people were respectful of one another's contributions, of the importance of being consulted, and grateful to have them in your life as a friend. Appreciation and gratitude.
What are you most grateful for right now?
That I'm here on time.
You were early. It was great.
What am I grateful for? That I'm here at Del Manor. That I'm as well as I am. I have my hearing. I have my vision. I'm beginning to lose my vocabulary, which as an outgoing speaker for many years in different workshops is a serious loss. I get into the middle of a sentence and can't think of the word that I'm looking for. Before it was automatic. Now, if I can't think of it, I can't hook it. I can't retrieve it unless I'm lucky. So I'm grateful for what I still have in terms of my language skills. And I'm very grateful to have been a teacher because my style of living and career are still with me. I'm grateful that I have 2 sons who are very helpful with their wives, granddaughters, who one of whom has designed the door on my suite outside door. She's an artist. I'm at a happy time in my life. I lived for 25 years on my own, happily, but I just got bored with the notion of not having a decent meal cooked by somebody else. The big decision that I made was one, it was time to do something about me. And secondly, I would not stay in my condo. I would come to a retirement home. And we did the research. We looked around. My real estate agent and I are good friends. We went and visited a number of different, 4 of them actually, here, Amica, etc., and chose this one. I was still in the hospital when the time came for the boys to be involved, and I could just smell them thinking, where are we going to put her next? And I said, you're not going to put me anywhere. I am moving back to my condo. I am researching where I will go next, but you're not putting me. We got that sorted out.
Have you learned anything from your kids?
My youngest son said to me, Mom, what you say is very interesting, but you talk too much. And I've learned from that, and I really do. So I try to put, and I play a very quiet role when the family get-togethers. I feel that they're not that interested now in what I have to say, unless they have a problem, then they'll call me or come. And I don't think that, so I'm quite quiet at family gatherings, letting the next generation have its say.
What advice do you have people who want to have a long, happy relationship?
You have to invest in it, not money necessarily, although that doesn't hurt. You have to invest attention, listen, and listen to more than the words. Like maybe if you're having a quarrel and you're really mad and you're saying things you don't really mean, because we all do that when we're fighting or disagreeing, take a breath and remember the good parts of that person or relationship and back off. But the important thing is to listen, not just with your ears, but with your mind. And it doesn't go for just your husband or your romantic relationships, but your relationships at work, at home, with friends. They all require a person who will listen and try to understand what the person is saying.
Looking back, what advice would you give your younger self?
My younger self was, it took me a long time to begin to believe in myself. I had very accomplished parents. My father was very strong. I felt that next to them, I really didn't have much, period. And it took me until my 30s till I began to feel confident in myself. So I wish that I hadn't gone through that. I mean, I did very well in medical school, but I still didn't give myself the credit for that.
What changed in your 30s that led to the confidence?
I grew up.
Was there a life event or a...
No, I think what happened is after I graduated, I went into medical practice. I was a general practitioner together with my husband, and we did very well in our practice. So I think it was the fact that people began to believe in us and trust us and so on. And as I say, I grew up.
How do people pick the right goal?
You need to ask Solomon that.
Talking to Gordon.
Well, I guess it's whatever you're comfortable with. They can't be pick them out of the air, you know. You have to give some thought to it and be assured that they sort of fit what you want to end up as. You know. It's not easy.
Yeah, I think a lot of people really struggle with knowing where to go and what to do.
I think so. And there's so much knowledge in the world. You know, all the knowledge in the world has been generated in about the last 10 years. I mean, think of that. That's amazing. And so there's a lot to learn. And technology is moving so fast. We'll all be replaced by AI robots and so on. You know, we have to be on top of things.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the advice you've been given is great, and I think you're keep coming back to like know the goal, know the mission, and stay focused and get on top of it. I think a lot of people end up picking the wrong goal, the wrong mission because they're supposed to do it, or somebody coerced them to do it, or they think society wants them to do it, as opposed to like figuring out the thing that's in their heart that they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any guidance or wisdom of how to listen to your heart and find the thing that you're supposed to do?
The first thing, don't be afraid of failure, because you can learn from that, and you maybe adjust your goals or take a different path. But don't be too discouraged with failure, because that's how you'll eventually become a winner.
What did you learn from each of your parents?
From home?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I was brought up with 3 brothers and 2 sisters, and we had our little arguments, naturally, but nothing serious, and we all had good times. My mom, no matter who came, there's always room for one more, no matter who's at the table. And I guess I learned that from my mother. My dad passed away when I was quite young, so I didn't know too much. But I'm sure he was what I do remember, he was very strict.
How would you define success? And do you think you've had a successful life?
If you're happily married and you got kids and, you know, you all love each other and you help the kids, that's success to me. Not like I said before, not becoming a millionaire. Like I got 5 kids, very lucky. So I did my job.
What are you most proud of with your kids?
My kids, I'm very proud of them. My 3 boys, I got them to read when they were young. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You ever heard of that book?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And they never worked for anybody. One of them is a professional poker player. He made about $13 million, but he lost quite a bit of it. And the other one, he had all kinds of businesses. He had 14 stores all over North America selling drones. Then he had to stop because the big companies got hold of it. They know it was selling, so they bought him off. And the other one, he sells motorcycle parts all over the world. So they work for themselves.
Have you learned any lessons from your kids?
I don't think so. I think they learned it from me.
It's an honest answer. I like it.
Well, I must have learned something from them.
What's something you used to think mattered a lot, but realized wasn't important as you got older?
Quite a number of things. I don't know if I can say one. That I needed others' approval all the time. That was a big one to get over. And it takes a lot of courage to behave in a way that you want to. And it might not always get others' approval, but you have the courage to take the path you want to take. And not to expect from others that they should be doing things. I don't expect anything from, and that's something very important to me. People are the way they are, and I really can't control them. I can only control my behavior, and that saves me a lot of discomfort.
Speaking of courage, what's the most courageous thing you've done?
My most courageous thing is that because needing people's approval was the most important thing in my life until I was well into my 30s. And so my most courageous things I've done is had the courage to say no, I don't want to. That courage to say no and live without the other person's, because we are really animals and we're frightened of getting other people's disapproval. At least, and I was really afraid of other people's disapproval. So that's the greatest thing that I've learned in my life, to have the courage to say no. I have the courage of my own convictions.
Do you remember what made the shift in your 30s?
Yes. I was a physiotherapist, as I said. And I was, some obstetricians were using me to teach relaxation techniques, is where I came from. And then they had people coming and asking me, talking about their problems. And I had so many problems of my own, and I was wasting my life dealing with my own challenges. I'm talking about my 20s and my 30s. And suddenly I was working at the Queen Street Mental Health Center and the behavior therapy clinic there. And in the 1970s, early 1970s, Albert Ellis came to give us a workshop on rational emotive thinking, which he was just expounding at that time. And he's the one that first said, it's not what happens to you in life that causes you to be upset. It's what you're telling yourself. And if you can choose what you're going to tell yourself, you have a great deal of control over what you're going to feel. Well, that was like, it opened the door for me. And so I read his book from cover to cover, and it just changed my life. And since then, I've been using it. I've taught it to my children. I use it every day. So it really does work.
Just walking into that one workshop one day completely changed the direction of your life.
No. I mean, it immediately. If Albert Ellis said there were 3 very main emotions, and I felt myself feeling angry or anxious or sad, I would say to myself, "What did happen?" In the beginning, I had to be analytical. What happened? What are you telling yourself? What can you change and still be truthful about what you're telling yourself to just lower the intensity of it? And so Albert Ellis went on to develop to say he had about 5 different approaches to life. Can I say them? You got time?
Tell me.
I'm sorry.
This is great.
Because it's very important. I don't know if I can remember because it's a long time since I practiced. Well, the things that get people stressed out is the need for approval. People should be liking me. I should be perfect. People and things should be the way I want them to be. Life should be easy, and life should be fair. If I personally swallowed him hook, I can sinker, but I'm reading, and it's true that and I've just talked about the reason it's very important to be able to have the courage to withstand others' disapproval so that you can live your life. Like Christina is our recreation director, and she's got a wonderful way of being able to say, no, I don't want to do it. And I admire that, because for me, it's still a bit of a challenge, and I have to talk myself through it. So I'm answering your question. That's the first one. Second was, I might be perfect. Well, that we all know. And why must I be perfect? And so Albert Ellis talked about the need to accept yourself, he doesn't like the word self-esteem. How do you measure yourself by estimating your self-worth. He said, accept yourself. You are what you are. You're your genes, what society did, what happened to your parents, whatever it is. You're doing your best. You're always doing your best. And you can learn for the next time. But never try to achieve perfection. Because even when a child keeps getting 100%, you've got to be concerned because they will turn off because it's such an effort to be perfect. I would try to be as good as I can be. But I gave up perfectionism. And I can't say that I gave it up. I would, if I got 90 on an exam instead of 98, because I would, what question did I, but then I quickly would talk to myself and say, Betty Ray, you've done this right, you've done this right, so you're allowed to make mistakes. And I would lower the level of the discomfort, in that case, making a lower mark. And the third one is people and things are the way they are. And Albert Ellis said you are in control of other people's behaviors. You're not in control. You can only prefer that people behave. You only wish. But if you say they must and they should, and he gave up shoulding and musting right away, and you just say, I would like, or wouldn't it be nice if, then you get rid of all, I never get angry now. I never get angry because I know that people and things are the way they are. Life is the way it is. And I have 3 choices. I can leave, I can ask them to change, or I can change myself. I'm talking your head off, but I can't answer it any other way so that you don't think it's rude. It's really a very thought out approach to dealing with life.
Yeah, it's great.
So I'm sorry.
No, I'm listening my head off. It's great.
And life isn't easy. And he was, especially with young children, knowing that you're going to not do the homework for them, that they learn that life isn't easy, and there's a little uncomfortable feeling when you don't know the answers, and you've got to figure it out, and they're allowed to. So teaching children early on that life involves frustration, and again, life isn't fair. I remember my son coming home saying, the teacher wasn't fair, and teaching them that life isn't fair, and it's sad. And that's very hard. I spent my whole life being overweight and being envious of other people who look slim and had girls having slim bodies. It's a very big thing with girls. Why wasn't I allowed to eat what they're eating? I can still look in the dining room today and see people like this eating everything, and I have to watch everything I eat. But it's just, life isn't fair. Anyway, so those are 5 major things. And I think it's pretty good if you can put everything in those 5 categories and find a way to have less stress in your life.
What is something you wish people appreciated more?
That's an easy one. Especially as you get older, you understand that life is short. I have so many things that I haven't done yet, and I will do. And it's really important because you always think as you're growing up and so on, it seems like you've got forever, right? And all of a sudden, you're losing friends, or, you have to think hard. My concentration is always, what am I going to do next?
What's on that list of things that still has to get done?
I don't have a list. I'm just in my head. I'm an artist. I paint. I've mainly just painted for myself. So that's really important to me to have a project like that. I also try to work with the people here. We talk about good ideas for projects. And my husband and I would like to travel some more. We have 2 boys. My oldest son is 60. And the next one is 58. So when people say, how old are your children? I say, well, I don't know. They're older than I am now. And in a way, it's true because they have more responsibilities, right? The main responsibility David and I have is each other. Make sure we stay well and we stay engaged in life.
What's on the travel wish list? Where do you want to go?
Well, we booked ourselves. We both had some health issues in the last year, and we're fine now. And we've booked a cruise in the Adriatic.
Okay.
And after that, we'll go directly to our son Daniel, who's a trumpet player, a musician. He teaches in a music school, and he has a number of orchestras that he plays in. Big band. jazz, and he's quite well known in Spain. But of course, he doesn't make the sort of 5% that makes a fortune, but he loves what he does, and he's a very good teacher. The kids really enjoy him, and he's got a good sense of humor, so.
So you're not just visiting one country, you're going to visit a whole
We're going to
bunch.
visit that one country, lots of countries, and then we go to Spain, to Barcelona, where we'll spend time with his family, Danny and his 2 little kids. Being a musician, you don't earn really a lot of money, so they waited to have children until they were older. So their kids are 13, and I think as a girl 13 and a boy who's about 9.
Do you have any regrets that you've learned a valuable lesson from?
I've been married twice, and my first husband had a severe breakdown, and we ended up separating because of the raising the children. It was amiable, and it was regretful because it was through my son's teenage years that they were very close. We were all very close, but I regretted that his illness was something that couldn't be, well, that it came upon it. We were not separated as a couple per se. It was because, for me, he was undermining by omission raising the children. I regret that came upon, because our marriage was fine, except what his illness meant in terms of change of plans, change of pace, change of attitude. It was hard on the boys, but we got through it. But I regretted that had to happen. Who wouldn't, you know? I'm always really, really glad in the teaching when the kids get it. It makes you feel good. Oh, you still don't get it, do you? I have to do it. Sometimes I regret the effort. The 2 things in my life that are the most important and have been my rule of thumb is smile and sense of humor. I smile at everybody. I'm a risk taker. And for me, that's how you get through.
What's the biggest risk you took in your life?
Getting married, maybe, I don't know.
Which time?
That was a huge change of life, and I lived for 25 years on my own, became a principal, have my superintendent's papers, which I never used, of course. I can't speak to one in particular, one regret, one moment. When it meant major change, that means I'm going to have to do something that's I don't want to do, or I don't feel like doing, but I have to do, and I will do it. And I get really, regret isn't the right word, but I get upset when people don't keep promises. For instance, you promised me the notes from the meeting for me to take next week to the whatever, and you don't give them to me, and you don't phone me to tell me that you won't be able to give them to me. I find that offensive and upsetting, and I'm regretful. The other thing I regret is how many people don't realize the glass really is half full. People who are so suspicious. It never occurs to me that the person might have negative intentions. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. I just see people and I go for it. And then they say, well, didn't you know? And I said, I didn't need to know that. I was, Or here I had thought they were going to be helpful and reliable, and they aren't. And I regret the loss of my expectation.
What's one book you think everybody should read?
Well, I guess the obvious one is the Bible, but some people wouldn't believe that. Anyway, I don't know, but in terms of authors, I was a great admirer of Churchill. He wrote a series of 6 or 8 books on the history of the war. His way with words was amazing. He had a great command of the language, and he used the right adjectives in the right place very effectively. He's a great writer, very knowledgeable.
What's the biggest lesson you learned from Churchill?
Perseverance, I think.
Never give up, never give in.
No, not at all.
Can you think of a decision you made earlier on that you're proud of, or a moment where you had to be courageous, where you were afraid to do something and you did it? Is there a story or decision you had to make?
I mean, life hasn't been easy, but whatever came up, I fought through it, tried to look on the bright side.
How do you remember to stay on the bright side?
Be positive. I love everybody around me. I don't know.
You have such a warm personality and a very kind energy. I think people would aspire to it. You know, to be 101 and still be full of life and happiness and positivity and energy,
Yeah.
I think is amazing.
And I feel so good. I have a friend now who just moved to Calgary, but we keep in touch. But we're 30 years. We've been friends, going out walking. Just keep going. Just be kind. Be kind to everybody. Because you treat people the way you'd like to be treated. And that's the way it works.
How do you want to be remembered?
As a fair person. I had something, though, that I didn't bring up. That just really reminds me all the time. I was driving a truck, and I lost the drive shaft. And coming down a hill, and there were kids crossing the road, people crossing the street there, and I couldn't stop the truck. I was protected by somebody then. Somebody looked after me because it was so obvious that I was going to hit somebody, but I didn't, thanks to God or my guardian angel, if there's such a thing. And every day I try to stay away from that road, and because it reminds me, it could have changed my whole life. You know, I was about 24, 25 then. I was very, very lucky.
Do you have any relationship advice for people who are trying to find that?
To tell you the truth, I started going out with my husband when we were both in high school.
Okay.
And then we were married, we were both 21. And we were married for 65 years.
Wow. I just celebrated 12, so I've got a long way to go.
55 years. Not too bad.
What's the biggest lesson or gift you got from your husband?
My husband was a wonderful partner. He really was. I mean, first of all, he was a very talented person on his own. You see, when we graduated from medical school, I was the top one in my class, and he was second. And every one of the 6 years, except one, I stood first and he stood second. But the year we got married, because we got married halfway through medical school, he was first and I was second. He was a wonderful musician. He was a very good teacher and he was an excellent family doctor. He really was. I had a lot of confidence in things that I could share with him and that he did. He was really good as a family doctor. And he was very supportive. He would be very supportive of me. He'd read my manuscripts or wrote articles. He'd correct them. And I'd say, not just the commas and the periods, it's the content I want feedback on. So what I learned from him is what a wonderful partner can be.
How would you define success, and have you lived a successful life?
You have no idea what I've dealt with. I don't even want to be as frank as I might be. I'm terribly frank. I dealt with one life-threatening and one life-debilitating psychological symptoms until I was 36. Both of those symptoms have been treated by medication. And so I was reading the newspaper when I was about 33, and the Clark Institute was looking for people who exhibited these symptoms. And I thought to myself, because there was no name for what I was going through, but these symptoms I knew. And so I went to the Clark Institute, and I was part of that study. Valium had just came out then, and they tried it on me, and it worked. It helped me very much. I don't want to say to people, go out and take drugs. I don't mean that way. But I think there's a place for medication and helping people to get over certain difficulties in life.
So back to, how would you define success?
Oh, I'm defining success by I have every day a good day as much as I can, and I have a good life. I'm just satisfied with the way I've handled my life, my challenges with my marriage, and I feel great about the way I handled that with the 3 boys, my 3 sons, and it didn't spill over into their lives. And so they've grown up to have 3 really full lives with families. And I think that the relationship I have with my children and my grandchildren and my nieces and nephews and with people in general is a sign of success. But the major success is that I'm serene. I like that word, serene. I'm serene about every day. I think this is going to be a Pollyanna show, but I've been through terrible times. Till I was 36, I really suffered a lot.
I think the great part is you sought help, where a lot of people stay stuck.
Exactly. Hmm.
Right.
And I remember my whole family, including my older brother, who was a surgeon at Mount Sinai. In 1970, he was so against me going to a psychiatrist. He said, "What? You're going to a psychiatrist?" Today, it's quite open and it's quite wonderful that people do go for help. But I remember that when I wanted to go, it wasn't considered.
Yeah.
No.
Is there a final message or final story that you want to share that you think people could use right now?
Right now that's a very good thing to add, because we are living through a difficult time, humanity, really, not just you and me. And I think it's very easy to feel in this situation, the whole world. I mean, look at all the countries in Europe, they're all struggling. We have to remember that although we don't have a huge role to play in our positions in life, but we have to do the best we can and pay attention to the people around you and keep things in a way scaled down instead of getting frantically upset about the direction politics, for instance, is taking. We can't control that more than voting and participating in whatever way you're capable of, volunteering or, contributing what you think is important to that party. And I think that's all. And never forget the most important thing is the fact of loving people, enjoying their company, or paying attention to how people are. Can't think of much else.
That's great. What is something you wish people appreciated more?
Probably what they have, and they don't realize, what they really have. You hear a lot of politicians complaining about the country is broken. I won't mention any names, but we're pretty lucky, and most people should be satisfied with what they have. Maybe it's a little envy of other people or whatever, but I think we underappreciate what we have.
What do you most appreciate of what you have?
Well, in terms of family, friends, those relationships are really important in life, I think. And maybe they don't put those in the asset column enough.
You talked about your parents. What's the biggest lesson that you learned from your dad, since you talked about your mom?
Well, he didn't get to have a lot of opinion. So he tried to emulate her when she wasn't around, but he didn't know how it worked. So it's sad. I didn't have a lot of respect for my father because completely without any ability to change it. He really didn't have any voice in the family because she was very busy doing it. I love my dad, but he was from Scotland, and he and my mother should never have been married in terms of their attitude and their, as I say, he was more timid, she was bold. He would speak up and she'd override him. But we all got along, we survived, and my brother died at 50. No, I just think a healthy respect for one another, the ability to be open-minded, to listen very much and to hear, to be willing to share, to keep promises. These are things that are important behaviors, whether I'm with my students, whether I'm with my family, with my friends, with my athletic opponents. Be open-minded. Its glass is half full. In fact, it's 3/4 full.
What is something you wish people appreciated more?
I think they'd appreciate more the right to speak up when they have a thought or they want to advocate for something. I find that in many cases where I worked and even here, people sometimes feel strongly about something, but they're afraid to speak up. And I think they cheat themselves that way.
Why are people afraid, do you think?
Oh, they don't want to be seen as stupid. They want to be seen as complainers. They want to be seen as dumb, whatever it is. But I spent my whole life as an advocate, so I can't sympathize with them.
What did you speak up for?
Well, I'm a physician. I was a family physician, and I became a professor at McMaster. And my chief interest, aside from the medicine itself, was to promote the careers of women physicians and also to promote women's health, because in the times when I went to medical school, women's health was having babies. That was all.
The work you did has had a big impact since when you started?
Yes, there was a lot of things about women's health that wasn't just related to reproduction, although that's a very important part of women's health. But the issues were that women were not being seen as separate from men. All the teaching, all the research, all the treatments were on the basis of what was found in males. So there was a lot of work to be done about women's health, and it's come a long way. The other thing about women physicians is when I went to medical school, there was a strict 10% quota of women students allowed in. Now, in almost all the Canadian medical schools, women outnumber men in the first medical year.
Wow. So it's 10% maximum were women.
Right.
Wow. What's the key to your relationships, to your marriage relationship? When I asked you about success, you said along marriage, to the friendships you had. Somebody wants to build their relationships. What advice would you give them?
I don't think I was the nicest guy. I used to play around a little bit. But you learn that you have to be nice to each other. That's the only way you can survive, You can't fool around and make a marriage, and you have to help each other so much and trust each other. I was married twice. The first marriage, I had 2 good wives. And, it was 2 pretty good marriages. My second wife, she was a good person, and she helped me a lot. I was a very shy person, and she helped me in a lot of ways, and it made me a better person.
For people watching, how do they find that person that makes them a better person?
It's a game. It's a chance. Some people fall in love for different reasons, and some people fall in love because the person sort of is good to them, and you're good to them as well, it works out. But, you know, there's so many different things that can happen. Nothing works perfect like that.
What's the secret to a long, happy, fulfilled life?
Just being yourself. Be yourself and enjoy what's around you.
Why do you think people struggle with being themselves?
I don't know. Maybe they're not happy in what they're doing.
How do you stay engaged, excited, happy for life? Like you've got an amazing energy at 101 years old. How do you keep the joy and excitement every day?
I enjoy everything. I go to exercise every day. We all have good time.
To see another amazing interview in our Elder series and get more life advice and wisdom, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
All right, we're here with Mike, 92 years old, gonna share some wisdom with us.
My wisdom is very old wisdom. The young people, they don't want to listen to me.